My son shoved a stack of papers into my hand. His voice was cold. "Dad, just sign this. Everything will be fine." My hand trembled as I signed, not knowing I'd just erased my own name from the house I'd lived in my whole life. A few days later, I came back home. The locks had been changed. My suitcase was thrown out on the street. My daughter-in-law looked at me with disgust. "You're just a freeloader." My heart sank, but that pain was only the beginning. If you're watching this video, hit subscribe and tell me where you're watching from. I'm Jonathan Reed, a man who spent his whole life as an engineer, never once imagining I'd end up homeless, in the very house I built for my family. After the mysterious death of my wife Catherine, my son and daughter-in-law turned me into a stranger in my own life. I still remember that morning, the city wrapped in gray fog, the church bells echoing cold and hollow. Catherine's funeral, the woman who stood by me for over 30 years, ended with polite hugs and empty condolences. I stood there silent beside her fresh grave. A knot tightened in my chest. Something felt terribly wrong. Everything happened too fast: the crash, the wrecked car, her body only recognized by the silver wedding ring on her hand. I hadn't even cried yet, hadn't even breathed, before the emptiness swallowed me whole. I thought I still had a family: Daniel, my only son, and Melissa, the daughter-in-law I once believed was kind. At the funeral, they held my hands, eyes red, promising they'd always be there for me. But just a few days later, those promises turned into knives straight to my heart. One afternoon, Daniel called me into the living room. On the table lay a thick stack of documents, neatly arranged. He sat there in an expensive suit, colder than I'd ever seen him. Melissa stood beside him, her eyes sharp as blades. Dad, Daniel said, his tone flat, like he was talking business. "These papers just make sure Mom's assets are handled properly. She didn't leave much. But I'll take care of everything for you. You just need to sign." I frowned, my hand trembling as I flipped through the first pages. Nothing but complicated legal terms. I asked quietly, "What about this apartment? And the savings your mother and I shared?" Daniel didn't even look at me. He just shrugged. "Mom didn't leave a will. By law, everything has to be redistributed. I've arranged a monthly allowance for you, Dad. You don't have to worry about a thing." In that moment, I wanted to argue, to scream. But my mind was exhausted, my heart shattered from loss. I had no lawyer, no proof, no one to ask for help. All I saw in front of me was my own son, the one I had trusted my whole life. I told myself, maybe he knows what's best. Maybe this is what Catherine wanted. So I signed. 3 days later, I came back to the apartment and froze. The lock had been changed. The key didn't fit. I knocked, then pounded on the door. Melissa cracked it open, a smirk curling on her lips. "You don't have any rights here anymore. This property belongs to us now. You should find somewhere else to stay." Before I could say a word, she threw an old suitcase onto the floor. It hit my leg with a loud thud. Inside were a few hastily packed clothes. Nothing else. I collapsed in the hallway as the door slammed shut. The corridor stretched endlessly, the flickering fluorescent lights mocking me with every blink. And that's when it hit me: I'd lost everything. Not just the apartment, not just the money, but trust and the sacred bond of family. I dragged myself to a nearby park and sat on a wooden bench. The cold bit into my skin. The wind howled through the trees. It sounded like Catherine's cry from the other side. Tears fell, but they weren't a husband's tears anymore. They were a father's, betrayed and broken. One question kept echoing in my head: why I spent my whole life working myself to the bone for Daniel. I gave up my own dreams so he could study at the best schools, have a good life. Catherine gave her youth, her love, her everything, to raise him right. And this is how he repays us. That night I wandered the city clutching my old suitcase. I couldn't call my friends. I didn't want anyone to see me like that. I rented a cheap room in a rundown neighborhood where the streetlight barely cut through torn curtains, and the sound of drunk arguments lasted till dawn. In the dark, I opened the suitcase. Among the wrinkled clothes, I found an envelope. On it were a few words written in a familiar hand. Jonathan, trust no one but yourself. It was Catherine's handwriting. My hands shook, pain and fear tangled inside me. Why would Catherine leave this note? Did she know something? Was her death really an accident? Or was there something far darker behind it? In that moment, a cold truth crept into my heart. Maybe everything I'd just endured was only the beginning of a much greater tragedy. I stared at that envelope all night, torn between pain and curiosity. Catherine's handwriting was unmistakable. Her voice seemed to whisper from beyond the grave. Jonathan, trust no one but yourself. I tore the envelope open. Inside was a small silver USB and a slip of paper with a few numbers. They looked like a bank code. I didn't understand it, but something deep inside me stirred a powerful feeling that Catherine had left me a secret, one she couldn't reveal while she was alive. The next day, I went to a grimy internet cafe in the poor part of town. Young guys sat around smoking, pounding on keyboards, shouting over games. I plugged the USB into a computer. On the screen appeared a series of encrypted files and one folder labeled Everest. I typed in the numbers Catherine had left me. A soft ding, the screen lit up. I held my breath. Before me was a long list of international bank transactions, massive sums moving between investment funds, shell companies, and well-known politicians. Then I saw the final number, and my heart nearly stopped. $50 million. In an account under Catherine's name with only one beneficiary listed Jonathan Reed. I couldn't believe my eyes. Catherine, the gentle woman who'd lived a simple life, had been secretly holding a fortune. Tied to shady international deals, I opened more files and froze. Contracts signed under the names of multinational corporations, notes about slush funds, lobbying expenses, and lists of powerful figures. Sweat broke across my forehead. My heart pounded as I yanked the USB out. Catherine had been hiding an entire underground world I'd never even imagined. A storm of questions exploded in my mind. Was she killed because of this money? Was her death not an accident, but a carefully planned hit? And why? Why would she hand this secret to me, an old man cast aside by his own son? I couldn't handle this alone. So I sought out Eleanor Price, a young lawyer Catherine had mentioned. Eleanor worked in a small office known for its integrity. I told her everything, my hands trembling as I handed over the USB. Eleanor listened closely. A guarded look sparked in her eyes. She said softly, "Mr. Reed, this isn't just money. This is evidence of international corruption. If it's made public, it could bring down a corporation, even topple powerful politicians. And if you're holding it, you're in danger." I stood there, stunned, chills running through me. I had no home, no family, and now I was carrying a bomb that could destroy my life at any moment. Eleanor looked at me, her voice firm. "We have to be careful. No one, not even your son, can know this USB exists." But fate was crueler than I imagined. As I stepped out of her office, I saw Daniel and Melissa waiting by their luxury car. Daniel's eyes darkened the moment he saw me with Eleanor. "Dad," he called out, his voice dry. "What are you hiding?" I stayed silent. In that instant, I understood somehow he already knew. Maybe Catherine had told him something. Maybe he'd been following me. Or worse, someone inside the law office had betrayed us. That night when I returned to the cheap room, the door had been smashed open. My belongings were thrown everywhere. The suitcase was shredded, the USB gone. I collapsed onto the floor, my whole body shaking. Was it all over? Then in the dark corner I spotted a small scrap of paper wedged under the table leg. The handwriting was rushed. It had to be Eleanor's. I kept a copy. "Meet me when it's safe. Trust no one, not even your own blood." I clutched the note, my eyes blurring with tears. Once again, Catherine's voice echoed in my mind. "Trust no one but yourself." And I understood I'd stepped into a maze where every move could lead to death. I clutched Eleanor's note in my hand, like a drowning man holding onto a splinter of wood. But that small hope was crushed just 2 days later. The police knocked on my door. "Mr. Jonathan Reed." The officer's voice was cold, You're under arrest for suspected involvement in money laundering and international embezzlement. I froze. Neighbors peeked out from their doors, eyes filled with curiosity and disgust. They handcuffed me and dragged me away before I could say a word. At the station, the person who filed the complaint was my own son. Daniel sat there wearing an expensive suit, his face stripped of any warmth or blood tie. "Dad," he said with a faint smile, "you're the one connected to Mom's secret accounts. I'm just doing what's right. If you're innocent, prove it." I wanted to scream at him, to ask how he could be so cruel. But I knew this wasn't just betrayal. This was a trap planned long ago. Daniel wanted to take everything: my money, my honor, even my freedom. During the interrogation, the investigator handed me a stack of papers. My blood ran cold when I saw my own signature on shady money transfers documents I had never signed. Someone had forged my name to make me the criminal. Outside the room, I overheard two officers whispering, "Word is there's a powerful force behind this. That old man's going away for a long time." I knew exactly who was pulling the strings: Daniel and Melissa. But somewhere inside me, a flicker of hope still remained Eleanor. Sure enough, the next morning she appeared wearing her lawyer's badge, knocking on the cell door. I almost broke down when I saw her. Eleanor leaned in, speaking quickly in a whisper. "Jonathan, I backed up all the data from the USB. But we're not just up against Daniel. Behind him is a multinational corporation. If you go down, they'll bury the whole truth with you." I trembled. Catherine, her death, was it connected? Eleanor stayed silent for a moment, then looked straight into my eyes. "I believe it was, and Daniel knows more than you think." Her words cut into me like a knife. I'd thought Daniel was only greedy. But could he have been complicit in his own mother's death? A few days later, while I was still in custody, someone secretly slipped a small envelope into my cell. Inside was a blurry photograph: Catherine sitting in an unfamiliar restaurant, her face anxious, across from Melissa. The photo was dated just weeks before Catherine's death. I couldn't breathe. Catherine had met with Melissa, my own daughter-in-law, before she died. Why had she discovered something and been silenced? A storm of chaos erupted in my mind. Daniel, Melissa, the financial empire, Catherine's death, and now me, all pieces in a ruthless chess game where I was just the pawn. That night I couldn't sleep. I remembered Catherine's eyes the last time I saw her before she left the house that day. Maybe she had tried to tell me something, but never got the chance. I felt like both a victim and a powerless man who couldn't protect the one he loved most. The next morning, Eleanor appeared again, whispering, "Jonathan, I'll file for your bail, but we have to leave the moment we get a chance. If you stay here, you'll disappear, just like your wife." Her words sent ice through my veins. I realized I wasn't just fighting to clear my name. I was racing against death itself. I nodded, and in that very moment I swore, if I survive, I'll expose the truth. Even if the betrayer is my own blood, I will show no mercy. When my bail was granted, I walked out of the jail with trembling hands, but my heart burned with hate. The sunlight should have comforted me, but I knew every step would be watched. I was no longer just a father. I was a man holding a secret that could kill anyone who touched it. Eleanor met me in a plain car, nothing like Daniel's luxury ride. We slipped down a side street into the suburbs. She spoke in a low voice, her tension clear. "Jonathan, I found something." She handed me a copy of the files from the USB. Inside were photos of Catherine, my wife, standing next to a stranger. A note beneath the picture read, "Victor Hale, CEO of Orion Global." I was stunned. Orion Global, the name had appeared in the contracts Catherine kept. That man was the link between my family and the dark financial power behind everything. Eleanor continued, "Mr. Reed, I believe Catherine discovered Orion was using her name to launder money. She tried to protect you, but before she could, they eliminated her." I sat there frozen. The question I'd been avoiding screamed inside my head. Did Daniel collude with Victor? Had my son sold out his own mother for power? At that moment, Eleanor's phone buzzed. Her face went pale when she saw the screen. They know where we are. Go. Now. We had barely left the parking lot when two black SUVs sped toward us. Tires screeched, windows rolled down, gun barrels flashed in the sun. Eleanor yanked the wheel hard, driving like a maniac. The car lurched into a narrow alley. I pressed myself down in the seat, my heart pounding out of my chest. For the first time I felt it clearly, they didn't just want the USB. They wanted me dead. After the chase, we hid in an abandoned building in the industrial district. That night in the thick darkness, Eleanor whispered, "Jonathan, you have to be ready. They won't stop until you're silent, forever." I let out a bitter laugh, my voice choking. I've lost everything, my wife, my honor, my family. I have nothing left to lose, but I will make them pay. The next day, Eleanor brought me to an unexpected witness, Arthur Klein, a former Orion Global employee, now living like a hunted man. Arthur revealed that Catherine had come to him asking him to collect evidence of Orion's dirty money. She had warned that someone close to home might betray her. Arthur spoke slowly, eyes fixed on the floor. Catherine suspected Daniel. He took money from Victor to help forge papers and transfer ownership. She planned to give you all the evidence, but she never made it. My chest tightened, my hands shaking with rage. I had been blind, thinking my son was only greedy. Now the truth was far worse. He had betrayed his own mother, helped kill her. Arthur didn't finish. A sharp metallic clang echoed outside the steel door. We were ambushed. Eleanor yanked me toward the back exit while Arthur got trapped inside. Gunfire exploded. I knew I would never see him again. We escaped, but my hands were stained with blood as I pressed down on Eleanor's bleeding arm. She'd been shot while protecting me. As I wrapped the wound, my voice broke. "Why would you risk your life for me?" Eleanor looked at me, forcing a smile. "Because I owe Catherine my life. She saved me when I was an intern. Now it's my turn to repay her." Her words cut through me. Pain and resolve mingled. I understood then this fight wasn't just to save myself. It was to avenge Catherine, to avenge all the innocent lives crushed by greed and betrayal. That night in the damp darkness of the cellar, I swore to myself I will not die before I drag Daniel, Melissa, and Victor Hale into the light. And I knew the final chapter of my life would not be silence. It would be a roar, ripping through the sky, shaking those who thought themselves untouchable. 3 days after the chase, Eleanor and I hid in the cold basement of an old warehouse. The blood on her shoulder had dried, but her eyes still burned with steel. I knew we couldn't run forever. There was only one choice: attack. Arthur was dead. Catherine was gone. I had nothing left to protect except her memory. The hatred inside me wouldn't allow silence for another second. Eleanor reached into her coat and pulled out a portable hard drive, the last copy of the data. "We'll put this out to the public," she said. "But we need a knockout blow, right where they'll never see it coming." Opportunity came faster than I expected. Orion Global was hosting a lavish gala at a luxury hotel to sign a contract with the government. The news was blasting it all over TV. Victor Hale would be there, and Daniel, now officially a financial advisor, would be at his side. That night I put on my old suit. I hid a tiny mic in my tie and walked into the ballroom as a stand-in for an investor. Eleanor slipped in through the service entrance, ready to blast the files onto the screen the moment I gave the signal. The ballroom shimmered with light, crystal glasses clinking like tiny bells of doom. From across the room I saw Daniel, proud, sharp, cold. Beside him, Melissa smiled like a queen, her hand wrapped around his arm, and Victor Hale, the man who once shook Catherine's hand, stood at the center like a god among mortals. I stepped forward, my voice cutting through the crowd just as Victor began his speech. "Ladies and gentlemen, before you sign one more filthy deal, hear the truth from the man who lost everything because of you." Every head turned. Daniel's face went pale. "Dad, what the hell are you doing?" he shouted. I looked him dead in the eye, my gaze bloodshot. You killed your mother, Daniel. You and Melissa made a deal with Victor for money and power. But your mother didn't stay silent. She left the proof. And today, everyone will see. At once, the giant LED screen behind us burst to life. Lines of data rolled across the screen, forged contracts, secret accounts, the names of politicians, and a hidden video, Catherine secretly recording a conversation with Victor. In that clip, he admits Orion Global laundered money in her name. The room erupted. Whispers, screams, chaos. Reporters snapped photos broadcasting live. Daniel lunged forward, face ashen, whispering in panic. Dad, please don't do this. They'll kill us all. I looked at my son, my heart twisting in pain. Then I whispered, You killed your mother. I don't have a son anymore. Right then, Victor pulled out a gun. He aimed straight at me, eyes cold, unshaken. Old man, shut your mouth, he shouted. Before I could react, Eleanor darted out from behind me. The gunshot cracked through the room. She fell into my arms, blood soaking through her shirt. She smiled weakly, whispering, Catherine. She's finally cleared her name. Then her eyes closed. Forever. Rage exploded inside me. The crowd was in chaos, but security rushed in. They tackled Victor, ripped the gun from his hand. The live cameras caught everything, his smug face twisting into shame as the cuffs locked around his wrists. Daniel dropped to his knees in front of me, eyes wide with fear. Dad. I never meant for it to go this far, he stammered. I looked at him, but there were no tears left. Only the cold, hollow silence of a father whose heart had been torn apart by his own son. The next day, the headlines roared across the world. Orion Global had fallen. Victor Hale was sentenced. Politicians lost their seats. Daniel and Melissa were under investigation, facing prison for collusion. And me, Jonathan Reed, labeled by the press as the reluctant whistleblower. But no one understood that behind the glory, all I had left was ash. Catherine was dead. Eleanor had fallen. And my only son had turned into my blood enemy. I stood alone in the empty house where Catherine once laughed. Now only the sound of wind cutting through the windows. I whispered into the silence, Catherine. You were right. Never trust anyone but yourself. And in that cold, hollow quiet, I knew I had won. But I had lost everything. In the end, I realized victory isn't about money or how many enemies fall. It's about holding on to a shred of conscience when the world around you is built on lies and betrayal. I paid the price with love, family, and peace. But the truth was finally revealed. And if one day you find yourself swallowed by the same darkness I did remember, never lose faith in yourself. If this story touched your heart, leave a like, subscribe, and tell me, what would you do if the one who betrayed you was your own blood?